RWA, breakthrough or another market failure?
Hello and welcome to today's panel on RWA, real-world assets. I have here with me Matt. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Matthew from Simply Staking. We're a Maltese blockchain infrastructure company operating in this space for the last 6 years.
And on my right-hand side, I have Vlad. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Vlad Karols, and I'm the Chief Compliance Officer of a regulated crypto exchange here in Malta called ZBX.
So the topic we are here to talk about today is RWAs, real-world assets, the concept of, let's actually even take a step back and ask ourselves about that. Matt, when you talk about an RWA, what do you define as a real-world asset? Is that a car? Is that a house? Is it a shipyard turned into an exhibition conference center that people can buy tokens in? What is an RWA in your world?
That's a good question. I think it varies a lot. So there's a spectrum of things that we can define as RWAs. So an RWA is something real. It has to be kind of exists already in our mind. Let's say stable coins. The US dollar exists already. We can tokenize that. That becomes an asset that is linked to a real world concept. Right? We can do that for mostly everything. Cars, houses, whatever. The question is, what will be the use of having, let's say, houses on chain? How are we going? It's clear how we're going to use stable coins. They're probably crypto's most important gift to the world. Right now, it's most important product. What will happen to the other end of the spectrum, which is like, let's say, your electricity? Can you tokenize that? And you can probably do that. Can you tokenize your car and have a record of all the history of your service history so that then you can sell it at a better price later? Those are all real-world assets. We don't know. We only know part of the spectrum, how it works today. But the infrastructure is there that whatever these tokens will be, whatever these real-world assets will be, the infrastructure is there to be able to trade them, to execute contracts on them. That is built.
So with all that said, the question to you, Vlad, is, especially being a man in the world of compliance, what would be the logic behind having a real-world asset, especially if they can shift the tokens upon which the RWA is created around, let's say in a ledger wallet, right? You hold it now, you give it to me, now it's mine. So my question to you is, what are the risks of real-world assets, tokenization as a concept, in your opinion?
Well, the thing I wanted to start with is from the compliance point of view. Is it something new or not? Like, imagine a company. Any company is a collection of assets, right? Net assets, assets minus liabilities, and the shares represent a fractional ownership of these assets, very much resembling tokenization, right? So why are we supposed to treat tokenization as anything new or different? It's only the technology which changes. And if we want those tokens to be tradable, and I think this is one of the ideas, right? Then why do we not apply a MiFID to it? Why it should be something new and different? If it's about real estate, imagine a REIT or a mutual fund which pools assets and invests in the real estate, in a collection of real estate. In the real world, it's a heavily regulated thing. So why this should be treated in any way different? So this positioning tokenization as something that opposes traditional finance is something that I still want to understand, to be honest.
So let's try and understand that. Matt, which parts do you believe are sensible in society to have tokenized and which elements do not make sense? from a commercial point of view and a legal point of view?
So I think what is reasonable to tokenize today, as he said, are things that are already a token. So the shares in a company, that's already kind of a token. Money market funds, whatever fund infrastructure that can be tokenized. It is very similar to what you have today. The only difference, or the larger difference, is that the infrastructure that is developed over blockchain is much more efficient. So it makes sense to tokenize these assets that already exist, but providing them in a different format, kind of changing the infrastructure of the financial industry, that will allow for these tokens to be transferred way more quicker. So banks have something called settlement time, right? And you have 3 days. Now it's down to 1 day in some areas. That's insane. It's ridiculous. Like you don't need to wait 1 day to send some message from some place to another. You can do it nearly in real time. And the infrastructure has now been built. And all the banks around the world are thinking, okay, now that I have all this infrastructure that has been built, how can I use it? How can I leverage this to reduce my costs? Because that's the end game, right? The assets, as we said, they already exist. I can buy shares of a company,
So
but can I do it better?
So you're basically encouraging just tokenization of mainly financial assets, which are already known out there, for the sake of driving down costs. You are not in favor of a total tokenization of everything from houses to cars.
I think you have to move step by step. And it is much easier for us to understand today how to use this infrastructure to move shares and tokens around. What to do when you're putting individual housing on chain? That is strange and weird because we haven't thought about it as a society. I think at some point we will, and it will be clear, but obviously hindsight is 2020.
So when do you think, because one of the things that often has happened in the whole RWA process, where something, we could take a few years back, Binance, they started tokenizing various stocks. Others also did that. Next thing up, then naturally the bell was rung by the US regulator claiming, wait, if you're tokenizing this, which is a real world asset, being a security, then clearly the token becomes a security. What's your take on that?
I guess it's correct, right? If you want to buy stocks of something, you have to do it in a compliant manner.
Shooting it over to the king of compliance. So in light of that, what will then be the circumstance under which you believe that exchanges like yourselves will eventually start offering tokens on securities?
Well, obviously there are many conditions of that. Let's leave aside what I already mentioned, that the proper authorizations are required to do that. But even talking about consumer protection, for example, let me give you a scenario. We had a potential client who addressed us with a project. The project was tokenizing emeralds, which are in Mexico and still in the ground.
Exciting.
So the idea was to raise funds to get them out. So how on earth can I know that this is not a crook? I mean, not speaking of this particular person, God forbid he's somewhere around, but in general, let's generalize. How to ensure ownership in the real world, how to ensure the valuation of what is being tokenized. If it's a movable property, where is it? What about depreciation, et cetera, et cetera? Questions arise. You know, we face it very often when people from non-regulated world have this excited idea that this is a new world. We're not going to live like before, and let's do it. Without understanding like the repercussions of what they are suggesting and how to ensure that all this actually works.
So with all this in mind, since you're the man who's very much in favor of RWA tokenization, what is then your guess for how are things going to develop in the time ahead? We have a new administration voted in the US by Donald Trump. They seem to be very much in favor of crypto. Is it your understanding or expectation that they will drive something like this? You know, Donald Trump has said that on his first day in office, he's going to fire Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC. And Gary Gensler has been one of the biggest opponents of tokenization. What are your expectations for this, Matt?
I do think that's changing. I've seen in the last years a shift. So you see all the financial institutions in the world, they're exploring this. And they're exploring this, I don't mean they have a small team looking at it, right? So all these larger companies, JP Morgan, Swift, banks around the world, irrespective of jurisdiction, they're working on tokenized projects. It's going to happen. They talk about it, they're planning. And I think the integration is now kind of in place. The pipes are in place, right? I think that Trump being elected will help speed this up, make it more appealing, less, you know, if you're on the board of a super large company, you want to be like a little risk averse, right? Or a lot. If the administration changes, that's going to push the space a lot forward. And I think that's very important. We'll see the use cases that come from not just larger financial institutions, but then other institutions within Europe that will target the market differently. Or other places around the world, other places that maybe don't have the infrastructure today. That soon they're going to be able, in probably a KYC manner, to have access to stocks that in a way that they didn't have before, and you get loans on these stocks in a way that you couldn't do before. So once all these assets move on chain, and it's a slow process, it's not going to happen like this, but once they do, it will open like a huge paradigm shift, right? In the eyes of the consumers. They will be able to do things today that only a few DeFi crazy people try, right?
Francisco, where are you? Okay, that's very insightful. Closing words from Malik. How do you see this, Vlad? How do you see this moving forward in terms of when do you think that somebody like yourselves will start implementing this, considering the market momentum that's out there?
I think we need to move step by step, one step at a time, and be cautious about regulations and risks. Because we need to always keep in mind that financial engineering like this, and I'm not against the progress, I'm still young enough for that, but don't forget that this kind of financial engineering is what led to improper valuations and led to the 2008 crisis, for example. Collateralized debt obligations, mortgage-backed securities, where it's so easy to miscalculate the risks and end up with consequences which affected the whole world and the whole financial system. So we shouldn't treat this in a light way, but remain cautious.
So in conclusion, is it fair to say that real-world assets are going to experience at first institutional adoption via known securities and instruments that are traded in the financial markets before we tokenize Matt's car into something that people here can win at one of the stands later today?
Probably. Probably.
Okay.
I hope that the car will be rented out and as a taxi and maybe bring some revenue.
And we can get here sooner so people like me don't show up late. All right. Cool. On that note, I would like to thank you, both of you, for being here today, and thank you to our audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.